General McKenzie, thank you so much for your time and for being with us again at the Cipher Brief on what is really one of the more fraught moments, I think, in what has been a difficult time in the region. I wonder if we'll get to the way forward in a moment, but I'd be curious to know if you could share your assessment of what happened yesterday, the Iranian missile strikes, and was there anything in the strikes themselves or the defense that surprised you?
Well, always good to be with you, Tom. Thanks for having me. I think the Iranian attack yesterday was a symbol of just how desperate Iran is right now. They've been pushed into a corner. Their major ally, Lebanese Hezbollah, is on its back foot, unable to coordinate an effective strike into Israel itself. Its leader gone and not coming back. So Iran's in a tough spot. So I think the decision to strike Israel yesterday was an act of desperation. Because they know not a lot has changed from the attack in April. And this was an attack larger in scale with ballistic missiles, but absent drones and land attack cruise missiles. Now, a lot of reasons why that could be, possibly to try to gain surprise, which they did not gain. And that's the only reason I can think of that they went with a purely ballistic missile attack. But I would assess, along with most of the people who've looked at the attack, largely a failure. An excellent example of Israeli effectiveness and U.S. assistance that deflected the attack almost completely.
So you mentioned April, General, and for our audience, if they need any reminder, that's the only other time that there's been a major Iranian missile attack against Israel. And a lot of what you just said, I think you and others may have said in April. It was an attack that was large scale, very well defended, did little damage. And Iran sort of signaled afterwards, okay, we're done. Now, this gets us to the next steps because Israel, to use the phrase, I think it was President Biden's phrase at the time, took the win, having seen that there wasn't much damage, all the relative good news of the strike. It certainly looks like Israel is in no mood at the moment to take the win this time, and they've publicly said a big response may be coming. What's changed? Why the different response now?
Well, I think that one of the key things is Lebanese Hezbollah is not in a position now to coordinate a major attack against Israel. That's obvious. If they were able to do that, they probably would have contributed to the attack last night. They did not. So that was always the main threat against Israel. It's never been Iranian missiles. What we saw last night, an initial volley of a little over 100 missiles and a possible second volley of a little over 100 missiles, that's about all Iran can shoot at any one time against Israel, because the missiles have to be placed on tractor erector launchers, taken to their launching site, and then launched. So Iran can't gain a larger volume of fire against Israel. So what we saw in April and a little more tonight is about an Iranian maximum effort against Israel. So now the situation is Iran has demonstrated their ineffectiveness twice. But I think, again, that reflects Iranian desperation. So now the Israelis, the question that confronts Israel is, as you said, are they going to take the win? But remember, in April, they took the win, but they did launch a counterattack against Iran. But it was carefully circumscribed, designed to show Israeli technological dominance and Israeli restraint. Now a much larger Iranian ballistic missile attack, and the images that we all saw of missiles being intercepted over the urban areas of Tel Aviv are certainly horrific. I don't think they can afford to turn the other cheek now. At the same time, I don't know that they need to go all in with a massive counterstrike. But here's the key thing. We always have said Iran typically owns the lower steps on the escalation ladder. Israel and the United States own all the higher steps on the escalation ladder. And that's where we are right now. I think the question is, the momentum and the initiative is all on Israel's side, completely. How do they cash that in? And so, they have a lot of options. They can do just about what they want against Iran, not with impunity, but with great confidence. They could strike the nuclear program. They could strike oil production facilities. They could strike Iranian leadership, or they could do things less than that. And how they parse that decision. When I was thinking about this last night, I said, well, they'll wait till they see what happens with the battle damage assessment. Well, the battle damage assessment from the Iranian attack last night tells us the results were negligible. Not a lot of casualties, some casualties, but not a lot of casualties. So Israel has a full spectrum of options open to them. And I think that what they want to do is probably prevent another Iranian attack like that, to demonstrate to the Iranians that they're not going to be able to attack with impunity. That would argue for some form of an attack. And I believe there will be some form of an Israeli response. I don't think they're going to turn the other cheek. That's an interesting concept in game theory. It's not an actual practical policy in the Middle East. So I think they will actually do something. What it is, I don't know. The Israelis have kind of worked through that right now, even as they continue to prosecute a major campaign against Lebanese Hezbollah. So remember, as Israel looks at Iran, they're also conducting significant combat operations up to the north against Lebanese Hezbollah. So they will have to weigh that as they consider a possible response against Iran.
General, you mentioned an escalation ladder in terms of Iran, the U.S., and Israel. Without going through every rung on that ladder, what's a low end rung for an Israeli response, and what would be an example of maybe the highest end that they might go for?
Tom, a low end response would be something akin to what they did in April. Go in, operate along the Tehran-Esfahan corridor. Go in a way that strikes lightly at some targets just to demonstrate your ability to do so. Something that continues the narrative of Israeli technological superiority. I think that's very important. Has a very deterring effect. So I think that would be the low end of things. Then you could look at perhaps limited strikes against some oil infrastructure targets. I think that's certainly possible. You could look at strikes against some of the command structures associated with it. Apparently, the Iranians were trying to strike Mossad headquarters. I think that would put every Iranian intelligence organization, make them vulnerable to an Israeli strike. You could go against them. So those are things at the middle level. And at the higher level, you could go against the nuclear program. I think that's a very, very difficult target. A very difficult target. It would be a very difficult target for the United States. It would be a very difficult target for Israel. It would require a vast expenditure of resources. And I'm not sure how clear the gain would be. Frankly, that's just my judgment. And I've studied that problem a long time, so I speak as an expert on it. And then you could consider leadership targets. I don't think they would consider that, but I don't know. So that's sort of the rising ladder. But here's the thing. All of these options are open to Israel. Initiative right now is squarely on Israel's side. Iran looks weak, ineffective. They don't have a lot. They can't. If Israel hits them again, the Iranians aren't going to come back with some crushing attack, as they said. They can't do better than they did last night with their ballistic missiles. They can launch drones, they can launch cruise missiles, but they were defeated in the last attack in April. They could call upon their proxies in the region to attack U.S. forces in Iraq and Syria. That is possible that Iran could do in response. And then they could choose to attack their Arab neighbors along the southern end of the Arabian Gulf. They would have more effect with their missiles against those targets, but that would widen the war and certainly not to Iran's benefit.
So widening the war, the whole prospect or specter of a wider war has loomed. It's been something written about and worried about really since last October 7th, if not longer. And now, the phrase uncharted territory is being used often. You, more than most, General, have probably worried about it yourself when you were running CENTCOM. Help us to understand what that might look like. What does wider war mean in this context?
Well, I would argue, Tom, perhaps we're in the wider war now. If your country's been attacked by 200 ballistic missiles and you're an Israeli citizen, you probably say, "Well, jeepers, this is a wider war." We continue to redefine what a wider war is as each step is crossed. I think we entered a period of wider war back in April when Iran attacked Israel directly. I think we've been in that period since then, and I think it's only growing. So I think you would see more Iranian attempts to strike at metropolitan Israel. I think you'll see them try to bring in their proxies. I think you'll try to see them bring in Lebanese Hezbollah. Although, again, I'm not sure Lebanese Hezbollah can coordinate an attack on Israel right now. All of these things will happen. The Houthis will jump in, although their ability to attack Israel is quite limited. Their ability to close the Bab el-Mandeb is significant. Their ability to strike Israel quite limited. So that's what you'd see from the Iranian side. Israel has a lot more options. They have a lot more combat capability that they could deploy against Iran, and they could choose to do that. They could go after some of the targets we've mentioned, oil infrastructure targets, nuclear targets, government infrastructure targets, and, of course, leadership itself.
And can the Israelis prosecute and sustain what effectively now are three wars or three fronts in Gaza, in Lebanon, and against Iran potentially?
I would argue that they can. They've had great success in Lebanon. But remember, Tom, the key metric for Israel in Lebanon needs to be they've got to stop the attacks against the northern tier of Israeli kibbutzes, cities, and villages. They've got to prevent Lebanese Hezbollah from continuing these relatively low-tech rocket attacks that have pushed 70 to 80,000 Israeli citizens south. That's the metric of success in that war. And they have not yet achieved it. And I suspect they will, but it's going to require putting ground forces into Lebanon, which they have done. And I've already seen some casualty reporting on Israeli casualties there. So those Israeli casualties are going to grow as they go north. It will not be an air war, a fires war, as we saw early on in this campaign. Now your infantry, armor, artillery, the guys they're going to have to, the men and women they're going to have to get very close to the enemy now have a role to play in the fight.
Mm-hmm. So last question for you, General, and it's odd that we're coming to the country we have spoken about the least here, which is our own. So we know that the United States has a very large force posture in the region and has for some time. We had a warning, it's not even 48 hours ago, from Secretary Austin and I think Jake Sullivan yesterday, that this wouldn't go unanswered. We heard that before, we heard it afterwards. From an American standpoint, what do you foresee in terms of the United States' role in any response and whatever happens going forward?
Tom, our intelligence relationship with Israel is broad and deep. I'm sure we're sharing intelligence information. I don't know that we would undertake any more right now, anything kinetic in this Israeli response. I think the Israelis are probably perfectly capable of responding on their own. I think we are committed to the defense of Israel. We saw that last night. U.S., what we call BMD shooters, those destroyers down in the Eastern Med, fired very effectively against some of those ballistic missiles that were striking Israel. So I think that will continue. Our support for the defense of Israel will continue. But I would expect that a potential Israeli response against Iran would be flown, executed by the Israelis themselves.
Okay. General Frank McKenzie, it's great to have you with us. I assume it won't be the last time we speak as this unfolds, but really, really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to talk to you, Tom. Thank you.